The year is 1820. In the quiet countryside of Palmyra, New York, a teenage boy named Joseph Smith stumbles out of the forest, his face pale and his eyes filled with wonder. He tells his family he has seen a vision, a visitation from God and Jesus Christ. He claims they told him the true church had been lost and that he, Joseph Smith, had been chosen to restore it. For years, Joseph keeps this vision close, sharing it only with those he trusts. But the whispers grow louder, attracting curious souls and suspicious ones. People called him a liar, a charlatan, a blasphemer. And yet, there were those who believed, and their numbers grew. In 1830, Joseph published the Book of Mormon, a book he said he translated from ancient golden plates shown to him by an angel. This was the beginning of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a new faith with radical ideas that would soon be branded as heretical. As the church grew, so did the opposition. Joseph and his followers, whom he called saints, found themselves unwelcome in New York. They moved to Kirtland, Ohio, hoping for peace. But even there, the strange new religion attracted ridicule, fear, and hatred. The saints practiced a communal lifestyle, shared new revelations, and believed in continuing modern-day prophecy. Rumors spread about their practices. Stories were exaggerated, twisted, and spread like wildfire. Their unorthodox beliefs made them outcasts. The hostility mounted until mobs began to assemble, threatening the saints with violence. In 1838, the saints faced intense persecution once more, this time in Missouri. The Missouri governor issued a chilling declaration: an extermination order, demanding the saints be driven from the state or killed. It was open season on the Mormons. Homes were burned. Men were murdered. Women and children were driven out of their homes and into the wilderness. Missouri had become a land of terror. The saints had no choice but to leave once again. They crossed the Mississippi River, finding temporary solace in the marshy lands of Illinois. There, on the banks of the river, they built a city. They called it Nauvoo, the city beautiful. For a moment, it seemed they had found peace. Nauvoo blossomed, becoming one of the largest cities in Illinois, with its own temple and vibrant community. But the peace was fragile. Tensions with neighboring towns escalated. The saints' practices, particularly the secretive doctrine of plural marriage, began to cause suspicion and resentment. Joseph and his brother Hiram were eventually arrested on charges of treason. They were taken to Carthage Jail, where they would await their fate. In the quiet darkness of that jail cell, the brothers prayed, knowing their enemies were gathering just beyond the barred windows. On June 27, 1844, a mob of over 200 men stormed the jail. With faces masked and guns at the ready, they broke down the doors, bent on murder. In a hail of bullets, Joseph and Hiram were gunned down, their lives extinguished in a brutal attack that sent shockwaves through Nauvoo. The saints were leaderless, reeling, and vulnerable. Their prophet was dead, and the future seemed bleak. But they were not alone. From the ashes of this tragedy, a new leader would rise, a man of steel resolve, Brigham Young. Brigham Young took up the mantle of leadership, but he knew that if the saints were to survive, they would have to leave behind everything they had built in Nauvoo. He began planning an exodus, one that would take them far from the reaches of hostile neighbors and government forces. In February of 1846, as snow blanketed the ground, the first wagons rolled out of Nauvoo. Thousands followed, enduring frigid winds and driving snow. Families huddled together, clutching what few belongings they could carry. They crossed the frozen Mississippi River, not knowing if they would survive the journey. The saints faced hunger, exhaustion, and bitter cold. Disease swept through their camps, claiming the lives of the young and the old alike. They pushed on, enduring unimaginable hardships. Their faith, as strong as it was put to the test with every mile. The journey took them westward across the Iowa plains, through rivers, and over harsh terrain. The caravan seemed endless, stretching for miles. It was a desperate flight into the unknown. But the journey was far from over. They reached the Rocky Mountains, standing tall and foreboding. Crossing these mountains was a daunting task. The trails were treacherous, littered with rocks and steep inclines. But the saints pushed forward, drawing strength from their belief that they were headed toward a new Zion, a land of promise. Storms raged, rivers swelled, and supplies dwindled. In the harsh wilderness, they built makeshift camps, but death still claimed many. They buried their dead beside the trail, marking graves with simple stones. But Brigham Young kept them moving. He told them that beyond the mountains lay a place where they would be free to worship as they chose. On July 24, 1847, the first group reached the Salt Lake Valley. Brigham Young, weak and ill, gazed out over the vast valley. He raised his hand and proclaimed, "This is the place." For the first time, the saints felt hope. They had reached their promised land, a barren desert that held the promise of freedom. They began to build once more. They planted crops, dug irrigation ditches, and turned the desert into farmland. Though it was a harsh and isolated land, they had found a place to call home, a place where they could finally be free. But the saints' challenges were far from over. They would face drought, hardship, and even conflict with the U.S. government in the years to come. But they had carved out a life in the wilderness, sustained by their faith and the belief that they were part of a divine plan. Today, the story of the Mormon migration is remembered as a powerful testament to human resilience. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, people can endure. They can find strength in faith, community, and an unwavering commitment to their beliefs.